In this video, I'm gonna guide you step by step on how to upgrade all the available firmware on an HP microserver Gen 8. And that includes a firmware which HP managed to hide very well on their website. Hello and welcome. I've recently purchased two microserver Gen 8s. I'd like to turn them into my NAS for storage, for storing videos and all my data. And I played with the first one in a video here on the second channel, which I might or might have not already published. It's a long video, so it takes a little bit of time. And I got a bit lost in that video because there's quite a lot of information about these machines and they come packed with the server-grade features. Now, HP website is well made, but there is quite a lot of information in there. And one question I couldn't find an answer for was, how many firmware do I need to upgrade on this machine to bring it up to date? I had a look online and I really couldn't find the answer to that question. I could only find generic instructions, but nothing that was really answering my question. So I'd imagine I'm not the only one getting one of these very capable machines for very little from the internet, and I'd imagine I'm not the only one trying to understand what do I need to do to bring these machines up to date. So let's begin. Number one, these machines are very much discontinued. The latest firmware that you can find for one of the components on these machines is from 2022, and I really doubt that the HP will make any firmware whatsoever for these machines anymore. So hopefully what I'm going to show you today is final. There's not going to be any further firmware updates for these machines. Now, there are four components that will accept a firmware update on the microserver Gen 8. Number one, of course, is the system BIOS. Number two is the ILO, Integrated Lights Out. I'll explain you in a minute what that is. Number three is the intelligent provisioning. And number four is the firmware for the network interface card. Now, what are those four components? Well, the system BIOS, we know about it, and that's fine. The ILO Integrated Lights Out, it's an amazing server feature that the Gen 8 is featuring. Basically, it's a small subsystem which is running whenever power is applied to the machine. It allows you to access the ILO web interface, and from there, you can do anything. You can restart the server, you can power off, power on the server. If your operating system has frozen, got stuck, it's not booting anymore, you can access the BIOS of the machine. You can mount an ISO file and reinstall your operating system from remote. You can actually see the video output of the server through ILO's web interface. HP provisioning, it's a small Linux operating system which is running from an integrated NAND, which is installed, which is soldered on the motherboard itself, and allows you to run some diagnostics, allows you to run the web interface for the RAID controller, and all that kind of stuff. It's a nice thing to have. If your operating system is not running, well, you can always get into the intelligent provisioning and run some diagnostics from there. And finally, well, the network interface firmware, that's the network interface firmware. Now, there are many ways to upgrade each one of these components. I'm going to show you what I think is the best and probably the simplest I found. Now, before I begin, if you're thinking, I don't need to install anything because my box is working, there's a little word of advice about the ILO. Now, one common failure of this machine is that the NAND, which is soldered on the machine, which is housing the intelligent provisioning and the ILO, fails. And when it fails, well, it's a hardware failure and you basically have to replace the chip. That was apparently caused by the ILO using the NAND to match for logging, and HP either resolved or mitigated that problem with ILO version 2.60 onwards. So if you have a working machine which is running ILO 2.50, for example, well, you definitely want to upgrade ILO to the either 260 or, let's say, to the latest version. That will hopefully make sure that your NAND is lasting a bit more. Now, that being said, let's go on the HP website and I'll show you what to download. We begin from this page. This is the main download page for the microserver Gen 8. Now let's begin from the system BIOS. So we click on BIOS here and we are presented with just a bunch of options, and HP is showing us the update utility for various operating systems. I'm running Windows here and I will need to unpack this file. So I will go with the Windows option. So I'm going to click the first option, which is for Windows x64. Now, J06 is the name of the firmware for the microserver Gen 8. They might have different versions, but the name of the family is J06. So currently I have a J06 from 2015 from my box. And here on the left-hand side, you can see all the previous firmware, including 2015, and the latest firmware is from the 4th of April of 2019. Which I guess is going to be the last ever, because we are in 2026. So you want to download this software and store it wherever you can find it. Once the software is downloaded, you can go back to the previous page. And now you can switch to the firmware view. And the firmware view is quite comprehensive. I would recommend that you switch to the operating system that you're using just to filter it out a little bit. At least you have one option per component rather than 4 or 5 options depending on the operating system. The second component that we want to upgrade is the ILO. And you can see number 1, we have version 2.82 for the HP integrated lights out. Actually, I'm going to select the second one, which is for Windows x64, which is the one I have. And as before, on the left-hand side, you can see all the previous versions. And the latest version is 2.82 from March 2nd, 2023. I said 2022, I was mistaken, 2023. So it's actually pretty recent. As before, this would be an update utility, but you're not going to use it. So just select the one for your operating system because you need to extract a file from it. Now, the third component is the intelligent provisioning. And for that one, I recommend going for a recovery media. Click on drivers and software and type intelligent into the search box. And my second result here is the intelligent provisioning recovery media. This is an ISO, so it works on multiple operating systems. The latest version is 1.74 and you just download the software. Feel free to download the checksum and compare everything. What I think I found, at least with my browser here, if I select all, it only downloads one file. But anyways, it's up to you if you want to double check the integrity of the file. I'm not going to do that on this occasion, but you can go ahead and check, of course. The third item is the NIC firmware update, the network interface controller. I had to re-record this whole section as a friend of the channel, Gabor, got in touch with me to let me know that there is a newer firmware upgrade for the NIC of the G8, but it's very well hidden inside the HPE's website. The NIC installed in the G8 is a 332i model, and there are a number of pages mentioning the 332i on HP's website. However, when I tried to upgrade what I thought was the latest version for the 332i, the script warned me that no compatible adapters could be found. I then asked on HPE's own community and I was told that the firmware already installed in my G8 was the latest available for my system. But that is incorrect. Gabor explained me that there are many variations of the 332i NIC and the one installed in the G8 is tagged as ID2133. And hidden into a generic 332i firmware update thread on HPE, the latest version which does explicitly support ID2133 is 2.21.58 from 2018. Too bad this is not well explained anywhere, so let me thank Gabor for taking the time to share this with me, as my own investigation did not find that information. Now, the firmware unfortunately has to be installed from an OS. I chose Linux, though the package is an RPM one, so it needs to be one of the Red Hat flavors. I ended up choosing Rocky Linux 9. Version 10 apparently requires a v3 CPU, which can be tested without installing it. By the way, Gabor did mention the package can be extracted and used in Ubuntu as well. I did not test that, but you can find the commands he sent me down below in the description if you wish to try. So for now, all you need to do is to download the update file from HPE and the Workstation Live ISO of Rocky Linux 9.7. I added a link down below in the description. We've now downloaded everything we needed. We need to extract the system firmware and the ILO firmware from these files. Let me show you how to do that. Now, this is the system file I've downloaded earlier on. You have two options here. Number one is to just run it and click on extract, and then you go and find the file that we need from the extracted file. But one other option is to use the decompressor of your choice. I use WinRAR, and just ask WinRAR to just decompress the file, because that file is actually an archive. It's an executable, but it's an executable archive. And within those files, you find a weird file with the extension 684. That is the system BIOS file that we're going to use in a second. The same thing is with the ILO update file. I'm just going to run it through WinRAR and just ask it to extract the file. And inside here, we will find a bin file, ILO4 282, which is the version that we're going to install. It's finally time to power on the microserver. Now, bear in mind that once you apply power to the box, it will take about 20 seconds for the box to actually turn on. So if I'm pushing the on-off button now, nothing happens. It takes about 20 seconds. That's totally normal. This only happens the first time you apply power. Next time, if you power it off and you leave the cord in, well, then it would be instant. The microserver will go through these early processor initialization and it will reset once or even more than once sometimes while it's doing this thing. Again, that is also totally normal. This is a server grade machine. It takes forever to just post. We need to access the ILO. On the bottom left, it says ILO 4 IP unknown. I've got this box from eBay. I don't know how it's configured. We will need to go through the ILO configuration. If you have an IP address already and happens to be on your network, you can skip this step. But if you have an IP which doesn't belong to your network, obviously I got the network connected, or it says unknown, well, you'll have to go through the configuration of the ILO. The configuration of the ILO is on the second page where the graphic interface happens, and at some point it will say press F5 to configure ILO. There we go, F8 actually to configure. There is also a self-test error, which hopefully it just means that it can't find the network, but it could also be that the NAND is corrupted. I don't really know on this box. We'll find out in a sec. No, it didn't work. Cool. Sometimes my keyboard doesn't get recognized straight away, so I had to restart it and use a different USB port. I'm not sure whether it's the keyboard or something else. This is the ILO configuration page. It's very simple. It's just to configure how to access ILO, so the network configuration. Under network, NIC and TCP IP, we can find that I got the network interface adapter turned on, and this one has actually a number of options. I can set it to on, I can set it to off, or I can set it on shared network port. When it's set to off, of course, it's completely disabled. When it's set to on, the ILO is accessible through the dedicated ILO port, which is here at the back of the server. When it's set to shared, you can access the ILO through the regular Ethernet connection where you connect the internet to the box. So I'm going to set it to shared because I don't want to have two cables going to my switch, one for the ILO and one for the regular network, but you have this option if you want. F10 to save, and under user, I will have to either add a user or edit the existing one, so I'll make sure that the administrator have a password I can recognize. F10 to save again. And of course, if your network has a DHCP, so automatic distribution of IP addresses, you want to make sure that DHCP is enabled. If not, well, you'll have to say no and set an IP address. Now I can exit, the box will reset, and the ILO should be accessible from my Windows computer. There we go, the ILO has reset, but I don't know what IP address has been assigned to the box, so I'm going to restart it again. And hopefully there we go, 192.168.0.236. So now I don't need the VGA anymore. I can switch to my browser and work from there. When accessing the ILO, you're getting a warning your connection isn't private. That unfortunately is normal. And here we are into ILO 4, and you log in with administrator and the password you chose a moment ago. And here we are into ILO. Everything can be done from here now. It's probably a bit more convenient than using the little small keyboard. Noticing that I have ILO version 2.50, so I want to update that as soon as possible. But first thing first, let's update the system BIOS. Now, system BIOS and ILO can be updated from here. You don't need anything else. You don't need to make USB sticks. It's going to be under Administration Firmware. Here we can upload system BIOS and ILO files. So let's go ahead and let's update the system BIOS. Now my system BIOS is currently J06, the old J06, but it's from, I don't know if it's 11th of February or the 2nd of November 2015. I downloaded a version from 2019. Also, this box has dual BIOS. In case one fails, you can swap it through the ILO, so this is absolutely amazing. You can find that information under diagnostic. It says redundant ROM support, and we have the same version on both BIOSes. So back on the firmware section, I just select the file that I showed you before. It's going to be the file with the 684 extension. I know, I appreciate it's a bit weird, but it's a JO613. So once you select this one, all you have to do is to click on upload. And if I remember right, the process is a bit weird because it looks like not much is happening, but I'm clicking on upload. You have a warning that says that if you are using the ILO to update the ILO, everything will work automatically. But if you're using this page to update other firmware, you might need to restart the server manually, which is what happened to me last time. There we go, firmware update. This is pretty fast, if I remember right. This is passing the image to the server. And in a moment, it will actually write the image to the BIOS. There we go, flashing firmware image. That's it. We got 100% complete. It doesn't really say much. And I remember last time I gave it a few minutes just to be on the safe side, and this will need a reboot. Because if you go back to overview, it will still show you the file from 2015. But if you check on the ILO logs, it says firmware update complete. So at this point, I can power cycle the box. And actually, I can do this from the ILO itself. I'm in power management. As you can see, you have all the options to force power cycle, force power off, gracefully power off, or also force a system reset. There's nothing running at the moment. The system is trying to boot, so I'm going to reset the system. We have a warning, are you sure you want to reset this device? And the moment I click OK, the server will reset. There we go, and we have J06, the 4th of April 2019. So the upgrade was very simple. And it happened in like 30 seconds. Fantastic. Now let's the server complete its post process, even though probably it's not really necessary. And the next step is to update the ILO. To upgrade the ILO is exactly the same process under administration firmware. This time I'm choosing the ILO file and not the system BIOS file. This is going to be the bin file, so that's ILO4_282. And I click on upload and it's exactly the same thing. We have exactly the same warning. So in this case, it should take care of the rebooting by itself. And once again, the file is being uploaded first and then it's being processed. You're going to see this check-in secure digital signature. Please wait on screen for a little bit of time. Be patient. This is not as fast as updating the system BIOS. However, here on the bottom right, you have a firmware flash progress indication. So it gives you an idea of what's going on and what's happening. And eventually you get this little graphic, little progress bar that gives you an idea of what's going on. There we go, the ILO is being reset. So obviously we're being logged out and I'd imagine the server will probably restart in a second. There's not going to be any feedback on the VGA because the ILO is working, behind the scenes from the main system. The fan is speeding up. I guess this is part of the process, even though the server is still trying to boot. So this is something that happens behind the scenes, and the interface here says to give it a few minutes, and then I should be able to log in again. There we go. We got the ILO firmware version has changed. Please clear the browser cache before continuing. I'll try to do that. And here we go, we are back into ILO version 2.82, which is what we need. I feel better now, and hopefully that NAND is going to last the life of this server. I'm really hoping so. If you happen to have a NAND issue, you would see an NVRAM data error here. You would have, I think, a self-test error. You would have a red X in there and the ability to format the NAND. And you can always do that. I think you can also do if the NAND is working. I might want to do it at some point. But if you end up with an error message there, you can try to format it. But if it still doesn't work, unfortunately, that's gone for good. And you need skills to remove the chip, which happens to be BGA. So it's not the simplest to remove. Replace it, and then you can reflash it. So you don't need anything special. You just need another chip of that type. And you can reflash it by reinstalling the various firmwares and stuff. The next item is the intelligent provisioning. For this, we have an ISO to run. Now, the fastest way would be to write the ISO to a USB stick and boot the server from USB. Unfortunately, the G8 is extremely fussy about the sticks used and how they created. It can work, but I had very little success with that. Another option would be to use the remote console and mount the ISO through ILO. This is a very convenient feature, but I found it extremely slow and the intelligent provisioning recovery ISO would fail to write the flash correctly. And it took me a while to realize that the very convenient HTML5 remote console introduced with the latest ILO firmware is very slow at transferring data when an ISO is mounted. The solution is to use the .NET version or even the Java version if it works on your system. It's still going to be slower than a USB drive, but it's going to be usable. Booting from an ISO via remote console is very simple. In ILO web interface, click on Remote Console on the left and launch the .NET version. If you're on macOS, you can try the Java version, though I haven't tested it myself. Confirm all the various windows which will appear, and eventually you'll see the video output of the server. Click on the Virtual Drives menu at the top and select Image File CD-ROM DVD. Select the ISO file you want to mount and click OK. The ISO is now mounted and available to the system as if it was a real disk. The image might boot by itself, or you might need to press F11 during post to get to the boot manager and select option 1, one-time boot to CD-ROM. Once the intelligent provisioning ISO has booted, the process is automatic and will reflash the onboard storage with the latest version. This is going to take a little time and might pause at some point, but it should complete successfully. Flash is complete 100%, I'd imagine the server will restart. Server has restarted, let's double check that we have the latest intelligent provisioning. And indeed, the ILO is telling me intelligent provisioning is 1.74, which is the one we installed. Happy days. Now it's time to update the network interface controller firmware. As I said, booting from a USB stick is challenging, so we're going to use the .NET version of Remote Console, and we're going to mount the ISO of Rocky Linux 9.7 Workstation Live here. Once the live ISO of Rocky Linux 9 starts, select Start Rocky Workstation Live. It'll take a little while to get to the next screen where you can just select Try Rocky Linux and you land on the desktop. Now save the NIC firmware update on a USB stick and plug it into the G8. Copy the whole file in your Documents folder. Now open Terminal with Ctrl-Alt-T and type lspci to confirm your NIC has been recognized. You can actually type lspci-nn-v and that will confirm that the adapter ID for your network interface is 2133. If this is not the case, well, I guess this is not going to work. Thanks again, Gabor, for this important piece of information. Now navigate to the Documents folder where you save the NIC firmware. I'm just following HP's instructions here. 2 commands are required. One, I believe, unpacks the package, and you'll need to run it with sudo. The second one will tell you where the hpsetup file we need to run has been saved. Next, navigate to where hpsetup was stored and run it with sudo. The script will ask you if you want to update from your current version to 20.12.41. If you are already on 20.12.41, well, then there is no need to continue. If not, type Y and press Enter. The update process should begin and should only take a few seconds. A reboot will be required for the new firmware to be used. Now, to be sure, I did power cycle the G8 and did the whole process again, and indeed the script informed me that the NIC was already up to date, so the update worked. Once again, I went with Linux, but other operating systems are supported. What matters is that the 2.21.58 package is the latest one compatible with the 2133 flavor of the G8's 332i adapter. Now, before I end the video, I'd like to share with you some pretty important notes that I discovered over my many days of tinkering with the Gen 8. Simple information which took me ages to figure out, so hopefully you'll find them useful. Number one is your storage controller. That's a RAID controller, and if you want to use any drives through the RAID controller, you'll have to go into the RAID configuration page and set up a RAID. Even a RAID 0 if it's a single drive. Now, in 2026, maybe that's not what you want. Maybe you want the operating system to have direct access to the drive. And in order to do that, you need to come to the BIOS, get into System Options, and then you select SATA Controller Options. Then embedded SATA configuration, you have a warning saying, hey, if you're changing the configuration, you're going to lose data from your drives, which is totally fine. And here you have 3 options. The default is this one, enable dynamic HP Smarter RAID B120i RAID support. That is the embedded controller that is running RAID, and I understand it's not hardware RAID, it's still software RAID. But if you select that one, well, if you're running truenas or whatever, they won't be able to see the drives directly, only through the RAID controller. So in order to bypass that, and also in order to boot from the 5th port, which is the optical port drive, which is inside on the motherboard, not accessible from the outside, you'll have to select either the SATA AHCI support or SATA legacy support. In my experience, the AHCI support works totally fine, and by doing that, you can boot either from slot 1 of the 4 bays that you have at the front. For whatever reason, you can't select the drive, it's only slot 1, or you can boot from the optical drive SATA port on the motherboard. The second note is about ILO console, which is accessing the video output of the server through an HTML5 console, for example. Now, if you're using the latest version of Ubuntu, at least that is the one I tested, it is very, very, very sluggish. And the solution for that is coming to the BIOS, System Options, Processor Options, Intel VTD, which is the virtualization something, and disable it. This is a low power machine. It's not as low power as an N40L, but it's pretty low power. I don't think you want to run a virtual machine on this server, but you have to disable the VTD in order to run ILO properly. If you don't need ILO, obviously that's really not necessary. And speaking about drives, bear in mind that this unit is pretty fussy with SSDs. This is the one I was using on my first attempt, and at some point Linux started throwing toys out of the pram for whatever reason, crashing every time, and then regaining consciousness, and then crashing again. Well, it turns out that the integrated controller is fussy about SSDs. This one works, but doesn't. Another SSD I tried, it works totally fine. Just bear that in mind. Now, a very quick mention about hardware improvements for this box. Now, this box has a socketed CPU, and I'm going to install an upgrade on the existing Celeron CPU. This is a Xeon E3-1265L V2. It's the most power processor you can install on this machine, which doesn't require a new heatsink. The heatsink here is rated, I think, 35 watts TDP. This is a 45 watts TDP. From my little experience with the other G8, it's totally fine, unless I guess you start doing crazy things with it, but for my use, this is totally fine. And this is giving a massive boost on CPU performance. This is quad-core, it's got hyper-threading, it's really a very nice update. But if you're thinking of using this server from a multimedia point of view and you want to do transcoding, just bear in mind, because the way ILO is wired onto the motherboard, you won't be able to use QuickSync from an Intel CPU. And this is going to be a disappointment if you're looking for something like that. Just bear in mind that for whatever reason, for a hardware reason, this is not available and won't be available. So any transcoding you want to do is going to be done at CPU level, which is not great. There is a PCI Express slot in this machine, so you can install a PCI Express card. I'm going to install an LSI 2008 card. It's cross-flash to get to IT mode. That will give me access to SAS drives. The backplane is SAS compatible, and with an external SAS, well, with an additional SAS card like the LSI 2008, well, you can install SAS drives on this machine. And especially second-hand SAS drives are pretty inexpensive these days, so it's another good advantage of this machine. It's SAS compatible with the right card. And finally, there is RAM upgrade. This server takes ECC RAM only, and it has to be unbuffered, which is a bit less common than the registered one, unfortunately, but you can find it. And the maximum is, I would say, unfortunately, 16 gigabytes. I guess this is it for this video. I hope it really helped you. It took me absolutely forever to get to this point where I was able to explain you in a reasonable amount of time how to do those upgrades. It took me absolutely forever at the beginning because all the information on the internet is there, but it's a little bit scattered everywhere, and it wasn't clear at the beginning where to find the right information and how to do those upgrades. So if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate a thumb up down below, and also consider subscribing to this channel and my main channel if you like these kind of things. Don't forget I'm on Facebook and on Patreon, the links are down below in the description. There is a free tier on Patreon, so no excuses, but if you don't want to support me on Patreon, maybe you can buy me a coffee, and the link is down below in the description. If you don't want to buy me a coffee, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Well, I wish you a great day, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon here on my channels for my next videos. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Bye-bye.